Thank you for joining Dr. James, Rini, and I, the Curiosity Conduit, Dana Ortiz, for a look behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Dr. Rini is a practicing psychotherapist for the last 46 years, and I am a retired law enforcement officer with 26 years experience, and I'm now a psychology student. Please feel free to add comments or ask questions below, and make sure to subscribe and like. Dr. Rini or I will be happy to answer any questions you have. So we have completed chapter 3. If you've been following, you learned that if life feels meaningful or not depends on your actions, rationale, how we balance life's opposing forces like pain and pleasure or fear and faith. And this balance is achieved by connecting with our unconscious mind and developing faith in it, which can help us create our own positive myth and purpose. So today we will start chapter 4 and discuss how breaking free from limiting beliefs and understanding the 3 forms of psychic energy can help us shift from self-sabotage to self-health and unlock deeper personal growth. This conversation may lead to feelings of inspiration and curiosity, and it could also create some inner movement. That's all welcome. Life will reveal your destiny through all opportunities you keep yourself available for. So allow yourself to stay open, and let's see what destiny delivers. So I'm going to start off with reading a quote. It says, consciousness, distracted by thrills, does not realize, of course, that it is becoming more and more invested in the superficial and the meaningless. What is meant by that?
The best way I can put that is that the ego is easily seduced by things and shiny objects,
Hmm.
thrills and frills.
The pretty things in life?
Yes.
Hmm.
Where the unconscious is where the self lives and is emerging from. And of course, who we are is much more significant and meaningful than the superficial things and the things that the ego tends to be attracted to. So that's why I call it a distraction, because we get distracted by material things, physical things.
But you say here that it doesn't realize that it's happening. So the consciousness distracted by thrills does not realize, of course, that it is becoming more and more invested in the superficial and the meaningless.
Because it doesn't know what it doesn't know. So it's easily distracted. If that's all I know, then I don't know that I'm missing out on something greater. I don't know, this comes to mind when I was a young kid at home. My mom made lasagna, and I didn't want any lasagna because I didn't like the way it smelled and I didn't like the way it looked. And my mother never made me taste it, so I never ate it. So fast forward, I'm 21 years old. I'm invited to a dinner party, and guess what they're serving? Lasagna. So I can't say, oh, I don't like lasagna, so on and so forth. So I tried it and I go, oh my God, this is so good. You see, so kind of a mindset there that I had come up with because I didn't like the way it smelled, I didn't like the way it looked, made me reject it as something that was for me. So in everyday life, we are barraged with all these things to get our conscious attention. And we get so inundated with it, we don't realize that there's something more significant and deeper to life than those things. And that's why it becomes a distraction, and we don't even realize it's a distraction because we've been consumed by it, or we're consumers of it.
So I think what I wanted to say about this was, this is an example of how the conscious mind, with the ego becoming invested in the superficial, is intertwined with also mindsets, right? And not positive mindsets, not mindsets that are for growth, but like the negative mindsets, right? Or limiting.
Well, let me say it this way. The ego needs to be entertained and stimulated. It doesn't want to be bored. Okay. And some of the stuff, unfortunately, that is more meaningful is boring. It requires, a certain amount of discipline to overcome. Like if you have to study for a test, it may not be interesting, but it's very important to learn what you're learning. So the ego tends to get invested in things that are superficial and meaningless because they're easy, they're fun, they're exciting, they're thrilling. But unfortunately, those things wind up being superficial and meaningless. You go out and get drunk the night before, you have great fun, but what do you get out of it beyond that? Hangover, maybe cirrhosis of the liver if you drink enough. But, who doesn't want to go out and have a good time and party or whatever? I mean, I know it's not for everybody. This is not my point. But the ego tends to be invested that. Ego seeks entertainment and stimulation. Unless it's more mature and highly developed, then it will seek out some of this other stuff, but it has to become aware of it. You have to realize that, oh, okay, this is meaningless. This is not really benefiting me any.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've often equated that the partying, that fun, the superficial, all just running away from yourself.
That is an interesting interpretation. You are neglecting the self, yes.
Yeah.
In doing so, you're doing a disservice to the self.
Right.
And then you become symptomatic as a result of that.
Yes.
So let me say this before we move on. And I don't know if I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Consciousness is the stimulus-seeking modality of experience. I know that's a mouthful.
Well, I'm going to listen to it again.
Yeah.
So,
But what that means is the conscious mind needs to be stimulated. Now, in terms of survival of the species, that was necessary because it allowed us to be more adaptive, and we would be paying attention to what we were experiencing and learn from that experiencing so that we could then reprogram ourselves and evolve and grow. Today, that same need for stimulation has been hijacked by the need for entertainment. And so rather than that consciousness being used for growth and reprogramming and correcting ourselves, it's much more for entertainment and stimulation. That's why people are on their phones, because consciousness needs that stimulation, and the phone is the easiest place to go to instantly get that.
So I'm going to read another quote here. It says, so let's say that you have the necessary motivation for self-development and the willingness to work hard on it. You still have to break free of your limiting beliefs. This task is exceptionally hard to do because limiting beliefs are hard to recognize, let alone change. Breaking free of limiting beliefs becomes even more difficult because contemporary culture cultivates many beliefs that run contrary to self-development. So this is really going along with what you were just talking about. And I thought it would be a good thing to bring this quote in there again and really hitting on limiting beliefs, because I don't think individuals understand how hard it is to even know when you have a limiting belief and recognize that. So it needs to be heard over and over. I mean, do you find that to be
Oh,
often?
absolutely. That's why it's so hard, because we don't even know that we have those limiting beliefs. Like back in the day, it was believed that, a man couldn't run a 5-minute mile until Roger Bannister broke that. And then after that, lots of people were able to run the 5-minute mile, because prior to that, it wasn't believed that human beings can do that. But once the mindset was broken, then other people were able to do it. So mindsets create a narrative that tell a story that then embeds us into the story of that mindset.
I like that.
And so that's why it's hard. And that's why it's helpful if you have somebody that you can trust and generally is good at understanding you, can point out certain mindsets or limiting beliefs that you have.
So I'm very fortunate because my mom is here. Now you talk about your mom had passed away, but my mom is here. And she is going along with us in this journey and listening. And just like everybody else, to include myself on this journey, there's times where things are going smoothly, or you see the synchronicity happening. And then there's times where it feels like maybe you're taking a step back, but really you're not, because you're further ahead than you were before, right? So maybe it's a step back, but you're still further ahead, and then you keep moving forward. So she's the person where I trust her, she trusts me, so I get to be that person for her, and she gets to be that person for me, in helping talk about, "Oh, that's a limiting belief." You know, she, says at one point, "Oh, I can't do this. I can't clean the pool." She has a terrible pool service. I'm 70 plus years old, I can't do it." You know what? She's doing it now. Not only did she fire that company, she's not only cleaning the pool, it's probably better than everybody else's pool that's out there. Just because she went out there, she believed she could do it, she knew she could do it. Another pool guy told her she could definitely do it, and she changed her mindset, and it changed everything.
So one way to recognize a limiting mindset, it starts with the two words, I can't.
I can't. Yeah.
Other limiting beliefs are like, you know, you shouldn't want to change for me, you should want to change for yourself. And I think we've talked about that.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't matter what motivates or inspires the change. Another one is you should need somebody to make you happy. You should be able to be happy on your own. And not that there isn't a degree of truth that you should be able to be happy independently.
Independent being the key word, I like that.
Yes. But we are beings that need to be attached.
We're social beings.
Social beings,
Yeah.
right. So in order to be whole, we need someone in our life, hopefully a healthy person that facilitates our growth and development and they can trust in, doing all the things that we're talking about. But to be whole and therefore to be truly happy, you need a companion. So that's one of the mindsets that culture has out there that tells people, oh, you shouldn't need another person to be happy. Okay. Or another one that comes up, well, you need to get yourself in order before you can be in a relationship.
Yeah, well, I mean, that might be going a little off of what we're talking about, but yeah, let's hear that.
Well, it's curious to have yourself in order until you're dead, essentially, because
Okay, I like that, and I'm sure many people will probably agree with that, so
hopefully you have a person that helps facilitate that in you. Because again, we have blind spots, we have mindsets, and other people can see it. They can see your back better than you can see your own back,
yeah.
in a sense. And if they're honest and trustworthy and invested in your well-being, then they can help facilitate that. So again, there's all kinds of mindsets that people have that are limiting, and also limiting in the sense that it shuts doors rather than opens doors.
100%. And, I mean, of course, there's this whole, like, link, then we get into the fear and everything that we're talking about with that, everything is linked. So, I am going to move forward on this, unless you have anything further to say about that. Okay. The next quote says, "Consciousness and the psychic energy it produces should be expressed in three ways: as instinct, as ego consciousness, and as an investment in the self." So please explain each of these with regards to expressive psychic energy.
Well, I would say that these are three structures that are inherent in being human. Okay, one, we're animals, so we possess certain drives, certain behaviors that guarantee our survival. And then we have ego consciousness, is the awareness that comes from the ego, from experience, and the ego is aesthetically driven. I think I've said that before. What's good, what's beautiful, what's right is the things we tend to identify. What's boring, what's ugly is someone else. Okay, so the ego tends to have a alienation.
It sounds like an a-hole, though. Is the ego a-hole? An a-hole?
Can be. Um,
Is there a nice ego? A good ego?
well, the ego is supposed to serve a reality testing principle.
Okay.
Okay. But unfortunately, the ego today is turned into self-centeredness, where the ego is really supposed to be a mediator between instinct and the self. So that's really the purpose of the ego, but the ego today is much more based on self-centeredness and entitlement, what have you done for me lately kind of thing, as opposed to a reality testing principle. The self is something that emerges. For example, in relationships, in order to actually share oneself, you have to feel safe. Okay. Now, you may not feel, and instinctually, again, we need relationships, we need connections. But if I don't feel safe enough to share things with you that are really important, then we're not really going to be connected. Okay. So instincts are something that drive us inherently. They're built into the organism to drive us, that allow us to survive and adapt. Okay, the self is that part of us that is our genetic code that we are meant to be. Okay, that's why different people want different professions. Some want to be lawyers, some want to be doctors, some want to do construction or work with their hands. Everybody's different because we're all have a different genetic makeup. Okay, now, for example, if somebody puts down a profession and you don't pursue that because they put it down, then that becomes ego consciousness. I'm no longer hosting and honoring myself because somebody has put that down. Now, if I was much more in touch with and honoring the self, I would not allow that put down of what I want to do to stop me from pursuing what I want to do. Now, that's unhealthy ego consciousness. Again, healthy ego consciousness is there to reality test. Is my interpretation or what I'm thinking accurately? And so I find a way to pursue that, or with time, the truth is revealed.
So it reality tests, but then also acts like the immune system and rejects what is foreign.
Right. But that's, again, where part of that consciousness is to be open to that idea. Okay, rather than rejecting it, is okay, well, let me see if that makes sense. See if that really does reflect a part of me that maybe I didn't see or didn't know. And that's part of that ego consciousness, again, is I have to be open and receptive and reality test rather than automatically become defensive or rationalize or, discard or what you're telling me just because I don't like it, because it's not something my ego wants to think about myself. Okay, so it can reject ideas that are foreign but are necessary, but it also can reject ideas that come from someone else that then make me not as proud of what I was doing, or it's not as good as I think it was. And a healthy ego is to say, no, this is who I am, and I'm going to honor and host that. Okay, so let me say this as a different one. Okay, like I have a client and she's, very empathetic, very vulnerable in her willingness to be open and receptive to people. And a lot of people will call that, you're too sensitive. And so they make it a negative rather than a positive. And so in reframing that, I'm saying that that sensitivity is really awareness and knowledge, and therefore something positive rather than something negative. But at the same time, I taught her how to empower herself so that she could combine that sensitivity with empowerment. Whereas before, that sensitivity for her was associated with weakness because everybody was telling her she was weak. And therefore, she felt bad about that sensitivity when really she should have been hosting it and honoring it, because it really gave her a deeper level of awareness of what was going on. But it would overwhelm her rather than empower her because, again, she was told it as a weakness.
And change the meaning of what was being said.
Right.
So she'd know how to interpret it.
Right. And she has become very empowered and very hosting and honoring of her sensitivity.
I like that. So this quote says, this is you being very straight with the readers. I am not here to make false promises or to give you false hope, because there is pain on the path of self-health, just as there is pain in self-sabotage. At least the pain that comes out of self-development is empowering, whereas pain from self-sabotage leads to emptiness and despair. So I chose this, and I'm going to say this portion again, because there is pain on the path to self-health. I hope everybody heard that, because we tend to, in society, and each one of us has done this, run away from the pain or think that there's not something healthy happening there.
Well, as a society, we are pain phobic. Okay. I mean, we're all the time wanting to take a pill, or, there's pain management, which is really drug management. So we're very pain phobic. You can't say anything that insults somebody or hurts their feelings. Whereas pain serves a therapeutic function, is what I said. And unfortunately, some of the most important growth comes from pain. Because what pain does, if it's used properly, it causes you to rethink some of your beliefs, some of your mindsets, because you're realizing it's not working.
Definitely.
And that's why it's a path to self-health, because through that pain, you come to new truths, where the pain that comes from staying stuck in things that are false will continue to give you pain, but will not be healing in any way. And so you stay stuck, and stuckness leads to emptiness and despair. Now, I'm not saying go seeking pain and whatever, but, somebody, breaks up with you in a relationship and you're hurt, you can become vindictive and wanting to, badmouth that person and alienate all their friends from them. Or you can look at that and say, what do I need to change in myself so that I can become more desirable or more attractive or, more valued in a relationship?
I like that. Now, I've thought about a statement I'd said before. Would this be accurate, me adding one word? That pain is the mind-body way of telling you it's need for change.
Absolutely.
Ah, right. One word. It makes all the difference. Okay, I get it now.
It's there to get your attention. And if you don't pay attention, you are still ignoring something that you need to pay attention to. Now I understand some pain needs to be muted, yes, because it's due to an injury or, just something physically wrong going on. But a lot of pain is there to get your attention and to bring about change.
Yes. Well, what I'm excited about is this next recording that we do, the next episode. It's taking everything that's been taught and that we've learned, and then it's giving
Pathways.
it's giving them a means.
Right. A structure by which.
Yes, which is very cool. And I think that a lot of listeners are looking for that, but there was some foundational things that needed to be taught first.
Conceptually, yeah.
Yeah, yes. So, is there anything else you?
I was hoping you'd ask that.
Well, I'm glad I delivered.
For a minute there, I thought you weren't going to do it. So yes, you're asking me to explain these quotes, okay, which is good. But the thing I want to add to this is that I do not want my interpretation of those quotes to limit how the listener can interpret the quote, because they have their own way of associating to things that is then more personal to their own experience. So if you hear these quotes and you're making sense out of them in a different way, that's good. That's okay. So I don't want to create limiting beliefs that are limited just to my interpretation of what I'm saying here, and be able to expand that out where it's unlimited in a sense.
I like that. I like that. It allows them to also exercise their free will, which we have sometimes. If society
Well,
gets
it's
holding
part of
us down.
self-development, because the way I understand it is unique to me as an individual,
Yes.
as opposed to me just parroting what other people are saying or doing.
Right. Okay, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, thank you.
Thank you for joining Dr. Rini and I on this journey behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Join us next time as we will learn what the 3 A's are and start the journey of the 10 pathways, a means to achieve self-health. And this is what a lot of us have been looking for, the means. Now ask yourself, What part of your life might destiny be trying to speak through right now? Keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, destiny isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. Until next time, be well.